Welcome back to Justice Under Review. We know you've been waiting, so without further ado, let's dive right into today's story. The gavel didn't just sound like wood hitting wood. It sounded like the lid of a coffin slamming shut. To everyone in that stifling courtroom, Darius Reed looked like just another statistic, a black man in a faded orange jumpsuit, standing before a judge known for cleaning up the streets by any means necessary. Judge Rebecca Langford smiled that thin, viper-like smile, thinking she was sending another innocent man to rot for profit. She thought she was the predator. She didn't realize that the man in shackles wasn't a victim. He was the FBI's sharpest blade, and he was there to cut her corruption out at the root. The heat in courtroom 4B of the Cuyahoga County Courthouse pressed against the lungs, thick with stale floor wax and nervous sweat. Darius sat at the defendant's table, hands clasped to hide the slight tremor of controlled rage. The jumpsuit hung too big on his frame, rough against his skin. To the casual observer, he was exactly what the prosecution painted him to be. A drifter with no fixed address, accused of aggravated assault and armed robbery at a liquor store on the east side of Cleveland. To his left sat Ryan Kessler, a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Ryan's suit was rumpled, his tie stained, and his desk a chaotic mountain of manila folders. Ryan was a good man. Darius had realized that quickly, but he was drowning in a system designed to crush people like Darius, not save them. "Rise," the bailiff droned. The door behind the bench swung open, and Judge Rebecca Langford swept in. She was all sharp angles, a pointed nose, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes like cold chips of flint. She surveyed the room like a feudal lord inspecting her serfs. Darius kept his head down, eyes lowered, playing the role of the defeated man he had practiced for months. Underneath the jumpsuit, taped securely to his thigh, was a micro-recorder the size of a stick of gum, transmitting every word to a sleek, unmarked van parked a few blocks away, where Special Agent Brooke Thompson and her team listened to every breath. "Docket number 4492, Langford announced, her voice crisp and commanding. "State versus Darius Reed. Are we ready to proceed with jury selection, Mr. Blaine?" District Attorney Victor Blaine stood up. He was Langford's favorite, a man with a polished smile and a soul as oily as his hair. "The state is ready, Your Honor. We are eager to see justice done." "And the defense?" Langford turned her gaze to Ryan without even glancing at Darius. To her, he was furniture. "Ready, Your Honor," Ryan stammered, shuffling papers. "Though I would like to renew my motion for a change of venue, given the recent media coverage." Langford cut him off. "Mr. Kessler, we have discussed this. This community has a right to judge its own. I will not have you delaying these proceedings with frivolous tactics." "It's not frivolous, Your Honor," Ryan argued, voice shaking but holding firm. "The local paper ran an editorial calling my client a menace to society before the trial even started. A fair jury pool is impossible here." Langford leaned over the bench, glasses sliding down her nose. She peered at Ryan, then shifted her gaze to Darius for the first time. Her eyes lingered with a mixture of disgust and boredom. "Mr. Kessler, I decide what is fair in my courtroom, and frankly, looking at your client's history, I think the community is quite right to be concerned. Motion denied. Bring in the jury panel." Darius clenched his jaw. The history she referred to was a fabricated rap sheet the FBI had planted specifically for her to find. Minor offenses, dismissed charges, vague accusations. The kind of record that screamed career criminal to a biased eye. It was bait, and she had swallowed it whole. As the bailiff went to retrieve the potential jurors, Darius risked a glance at the gallery. It was packed, mostly with older white residents of the county, Langford's voting base. They whispered among themselves, casting wary glances his way. "Don't worry, kid," Ryan whispered. "I'm going to fight for you, but she's in a mood today." "It's okay, Mr. Kessler," Darius said. his voice a rough rasp, staying in character, uneducated, scared, resigned. "I just want it to be over." "That's what they want you to think," Ryan sighed. "They want you to plead out. But you said you didn't do it." "I didn't," Darius replied. And that part was true. The liquor store robbery had happened, but the real perpetrator was a low-level enforcer for Riverside Correctional Facility, the same private prison company that had secretly funneled money into Judge Langford's re-election campaign through a shell corporation. Darius wasn't just here to prove his innocence. He was here to prove that Langford was sending men to Riverside facilities in exchange for kickbacks. She was filling beds for profit, targeting the vulnerable, the poor, and especially the black community. The jury pool filed in. Darius watched them closely, reading every micro-expression. He saw fear. He saw annoyance. But mostly, as their eyes landed on the judge, he saw reverence. Langford had this town under her thumb. The selection process began, and immediately the fix was in. The voir dire, supposed to be the bedrock of a fair trial, became a slaughter. Victor Blaine moved with the confidence of a man who knew the referee was on his payroll. He asked soft, leading questions to the jurors who looked like they belonged to the local country club. But when Ryan's turn came, the atmosphere shifted. Ryan focused on a middle-aged mechanic named Mr. Henderson, who had looked at Darius with curiosity rather than immediate condemnation. "Mr. Henderson," Ryan asked, "do you believe a man is innocent until proven guilty, regardless of what he looks like?" "I do," Henderson said firmly. "My brother got falsely accused once. I know how the system can get it wrong." Langford's head snapped up, eyes narrowed. This was a variable she didn't like. A juror with empathy, a juror with doubt. Before Ryan could ask another question, she interjected. "Mr. Henderson, are you saying your personal experience would prevent you from listening to the instructions of this court?" She twisted his words effortlessly. "We need jurors who can be objective, not those with a vendetta against the police. Excused for cause. You may step down, Mr. Henderson." A murmur went through the room. Ryan stood stunned. "Your Honor, that is highly irregular." He expressed no bias against the prosecution. "I have made my ruling, Mr. Kessler." Langford slammed her hand on the bench. "Do not test my patience. I will not have a juror who enters this box with a preconceived notion that the system is broken. Justice under review. Subscribe now and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss our latest stories." The pattern continued. Every time a person of color, a younger person, or anyone open-minded took the stand, Langford or Blaine found a reason to cut them. They used peremptory challenges aggressively. And when Ryan raised a Batson challenge, claiming they were excluding jurors based on race, Langford scoffed. "Mr. Kessler, simply because the defendant is black does not mean you are entitled to a jury that looks like him. We want a jury of peers, law-abiding citizens." By the time the final 12 were seated, the jury box looked like a choir from another era. 11 white jurors and one older Hispanic man who looked terrified to be there. The trial began immediately. Langford didn't believe in breaks. Opening statements. Blaine buttoned his jacket and walked to the jury box. He didn't use notes. He spun a yarn of fear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a beautiful town, a safe town. But there are those who come from outside who look at what we have and want to take it. The defendant, Darius Reed, is one of those men." He pointed a finger directly at Darius. Darius flinched, playing the part. Blaine hissed about a predator who didn't care about the law or the victim. The jury ate it up, staring at Darius with open hostility. Then it was Ryan's turn. He stood looking tired. "Members of the jury, Darius Reed is a man, not a predator. A man who was sleeping in his car miles away when this crime occurred. The prosecution has no DNA, no fingerprints, just a grainy video and a witness who was told who to pick out of a lineup." Objections flew. Langford sustained every one, dismantling Ryan's defense with sighs and eye rolls. "The evidence will show," Ryan corrected through gritted teeth, "that the identification procedure was flawed, that his client was innocent." She called the first witness. The prosecution's detective described finding Darius in his car and discovering a pistol under the seat. Ryan shot up. "Objection! We have never seen this gun. It wasn't in the discovery file." Langford waved her hand dismissively. "Sit down, Mr. Kessler. It was a clerical error. I'll allow it." Ryan's voice cracked. "Your Honor, this is trial by ambush." "Bailiff, remove the jury." Once they were gone, Langford leaned over the bench, face furious. "Mr. Kessler, you are treading on thin ice. You are questioning the integrity of this court." "I am questioning the integrity of this evidence," Ryan shot back. "The objection is overruled," Langford stated. "The gun is admitted. Bring the jury back." Darius looked at the camera in the corner and gave a subtle nod. "Strike one, Judge. You just accepted planted evidence without chain of custody." But Langford wasn't done. She interjected during Ryan's cross-examination, answering for the witness, rolling her eyes, sighing loudly, signaling to the jury that this lawyer was a joke and his client was guilty. By the end of the day, Darius could feel the hatred radiating from the jury box. They didn't see an FBI agent. They saw a monster Judge Langford had told them to destroy. As the bailiff handcuffed Darius, Langford caught his eye. "Sleep well, Mr. Reed," she mocked softly. "The accommodations at Riverside are robust." Darius looked her dead in the eye for the first time. He dropped the fear, dropped the slouch. For a split second, the predator inside surfaced. "I sleep just fine, Judge," he said, voice dropping an octave, losing the street slang. "Do you?" The next day, the atmosphere was heavier, thick with the arrogance of a prosecution team that knew they couldn't lose. Blaine called his star witness, Gary Mills, a thin, twitchy man who pointed a shaking finger at Darius and claimed he saw him run from the store holding a gun. Ryan cross-examined him hard, exposing lies about a dog that didn't exist and pending drug charges. But Langford shut it down, threatening Ryan with contempt and slamming her gavel. "No further questions," Ryan whispered, defeated. Darius tapped his finger on the table 3 times, the signal. In the surveillance van, Agent Brooke Thompson grinned as her team traced the payoff straight to the district attorney's office. Blaine rested his case. Ryan had almost nothing left. "The defense calls the defendant, Darius Reed." The courtroom rippled with surprise. Darius took the stand. He didn't talk about the robbery. He talked about them. "I respect the law," he said calmly, looking straight at Judge Langford. "But when the law is used as a weapon to fill prison beds for a paycheck, that isn't authority. That's organized crime." Langford shrieked for the statement to be struck. She screamed for him to be removed. But the seed was planted. A reporter in the gallery scribbled furiously. The mechanic who had been excused earlier sat in the back, watching. Closing arguments were brutal. Blaine shouted every racial stereotype. Ryan spoke softly about reasonable doubt. Langford rolled her eyes and checked her watch, dismantling the defense with body language alone. Her jury instructions were practically a directed verdict. "You may consider his outburst on the stand as evidence of disrespect for the law. You may also consider that the police officers are sworn public servants, while the defendant is a transient." The jury retired. 2 hours later, they returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts. Langford beamed. "Mr. Reed, I sentence you to 25 years at Riverside Correctional Facility." The bailiff moved to take him away, but Darius stood planted like an oak. "Not yet," he said loudly. Langford snapped, "Get him out of here!" Darius reached into his ear, pulled out the tiny flesh-colored earpiece, and dropped it on the table. Then he reached into his jumpsuit and slammed a gold badge down beside it. Special Agent Darius Reed, FBI Public Corruption Task Force. The silence was absolute. Langford froze, gavel hovering. Blaine dropped his pen. "Lock the doors," Darius shouted. The reporter in the gallery threw off his jacket, revealing an FBI windbreaker. The mechanic pulled a badge. Tactical agents flooded the room. "Victor Blaine," Agent Brooke Thompson announced, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, and racketeering. Justice under review. Subscribe now and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss our latest stories." Darius walked out from behind the defense table, no longer a prisoner, but the man in charge. He stopped in front of the judge's bench and looked up at her. She looked small now. "Rebecca Langford," he said, voice calm and deadly. "I have recorded every word you said in this trial. I have the bank records of your husband's shell company receiving funds from Riverside prisons. I have the messages coordinating the jury selection. Step down from the bench." Langford stammered about immunity. Darius held up the warrant. "Judicial immunity doesn't cover federal racketeering and conspiracy to deprive civil rights. You sold justice. Now you're going to pay for it." The bailiff, shaking, climbed the steps and cuffed her himself. As they dragged her down, her robe snagged and ripped, revealing the expensive dress beneath, paid for with the lives of innocent men. Darius leaned in close. "You gave me 25 years. With the federal charges we have lined up, you're looking at life without parole, and the federal system doesn't have a Riverside contract. You're going to general population." The courtroom erupted. Darius turned to Ryan Kessler, still sitting stunned, and extended a hand. "You're a good lawyer, Ryan. Sorry for the heart attack." The chaos in courtroom 4B was only the spark. The explosion came in the days that followed. The image of Judge Rebecca Langford, disheveled and screaming in handcuffs, was everywhere. The Washington Post headline read, "The gavel falls. FBI sting exposes judicial ring of terror." But for Special Agent Darius Reed, the arrest was just the beginning. The real work was in the dissection. In the interrogation room, Victor Blaine crumbled within hours, singing every detail of the scheme, the signals during trial, the quotas for prison subsidies, the planted evidence. He gave up the sheriff, the blackmail, the entire network. Meanwhile, agents found Langford's secret ledger hidden in her home, a trophy collection of names and dollar amounts written in red ink next to every man she had sentenced. Ryan Kessler sat across from Darius in a small conference room, still shell-shocked. "I thought I was fighting a fair fight," he whispered. "You were fighting a rigged game in the dark," Darius said gently. "You never stopped. That's why I chose you. You're not under investigation, Ryan. You're a hero. And the governor is going to need an interim district attorney. Interested in the job?" The fall from grace was brutal. Langford was denied bail and transferred to the Cleveland Federal Detention Center. Stripped of her robe, her dignity, and her power, she stood in a plastic bin wearing the same rough orange jumpsuit Darius had worn. The guards treated her like any other inmate. The women in the yard remembered every life she had ruined. They didn't touch her. They just watched, every meal, every night, letting her live in the fear she had once inflicted on others. For months she withered, a hollow shell who jumped at every shadow. She had built a factory of despair, and now she was the product. The federal trial of United States versus Rebecca Langford was meticulous and devastating. Darius sat in the front row every day, bearing witness as the evidence. The recordings, the ledger, the confessions buried her. The jury deliberated briefly. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the gallery was filled with the families of her victims, mothers holding photos, fathers who had lost everything. The judge looked down at Langford in her orange jumpsuit. "You were entrusted with the most sacred power in our society, the power to take away a person's liberty. You sold that power for handbags and vacations. You turned this courthouse into a marketplace of misery, I sentence you to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole, plus 100 years. The gavel banged like freedom. As Langford was led away weeping, she locked eyes with Darius. He didn't smile. He simply nodded, a solemn acknowledgement that the balance had finally been restored. Outside on the courthouse steps, sunlight flooded the square. Darius slipped through the reporters and headed toward his car when Ryan Kessler caught up, now wearing a sharp new suit. "Congratulations, Mr. District Attorney," Darius said, shaking his hand. "Acting," Ryan beamed. "But the election is coming, and the polls look good." "You'll win," Darius replied. "People know who the real fighter is." Ryan's voice grew emotional. "We've already released 40 innocent men. 40 families are whole again because of this." "Because of us," Darius corrected. "The FBI opened the door. You're the one walking them through it." "Where are you headed now?" Ryan asked. Darius opened the door to his unmarked sedan. "There's a mayor in Chicago taking bribes from a construction firm and a sheriff in Alabama running a chop shop. The work doesn't end." Ryan stepped back. "Give them hell, Agent Reed." "Always." Darius drove away, watching the courthouse shrink in the rearview mirror. It no longer looked like a fortress of corruption. It just looked like a building. The monsters had been cleared out. The shadows were gone. He turned on the radio, tapped the steering wheel, and headed toward the horizon. The Queen had fallen, and the board was finally clear. The story of Judge Rebecca Langford is a terrifying reminder that sometimes the greatest criminals don't wear masks. They wear robes. She thought her power made her untouchable, but she forgot the oldest rule. Even the Queen can be taken by a pawn who refuses to back down. Darius Reed proved that justice isn't about the uniform you wear. It's about the truth you defend. Langford is now rotting in the very system she profited from. Poetic justice no amount of money can buy. Justice under review. Subscribe now and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss our latest stories.